Hello, I'm Jim Cornwall, and this is the WalkingPost.com podcast. Hello from me, the editor of WalkingPost.com, the news website dedicated to walking, with all the latest on new trails, walking festivals, books, gear, and more. This podcast is airing on Friday, March the 14th. Hopefully you tuned into the podcast last week when we talked about the Chepstow Walking Festival and Experience Pakistan. If not, you can catch up on the podcast player on walkingpost.com, or you can type Walking Post into your favourite podcast platform like Spotify, and you can listen and subscribe there. This week we have a couple of guests again, one talking about the beautiful Devon coastline, and that's Graham Kerr, owner of English Riviera Walking Tours, who is integral to putting together the English Riviera Walking Festival. And we also talk to Annika Mang, and she is, among other things, the founder of Trail Collective, and she knows an awful lot about hiking in the Canadian province of Saskatchewan. But before we get to the interviews, here are some of the news articles we had on WalkingPost.com this past week. Actually, I'm going to lead here with some news that I didn't publish. I received a press release about a new series of men's boots. It mentioned what they were suitable for, and it came across as these boots are for professional men who need rugged shoes, durability and comfort, but there was no mention of the fact that women can be professional and may also need rugged and durable boots. So I wondered why there weren't any boots for them in this new collection, so I didn't publish it. We had an article on a new footbridge on the Cunnan Trail in Wales. The Sanpoku Regional Park is launching in northeast Japan in May, and construction started on the £5.6 million Newtonards to Bangor Greenway in Northern Ireland. Funny how I've not been there or to the one in Wales, but I have spent a lot of time in the place that is pronounced Bangor, and that's in Maine. It took a while, but we finally put together a list of all of the walking festivals in the UK and around Europe. It's in an article, but it's also now to be found on the front page of the website for easy access. I'm certain that we will have missed some, and if we did, please do let us know so we can add them to the listings. We had an article on a huge area of the Catskills in New York State, and that is being bought up, not for something negative, but for conservation and hiking. One state that doesn't have a state trail is the huge state of Texas, but that might be changing as the ex-Texas Trail gathers momentum. I did drive across Texas once and it took the best part of a day, and that's not because it was a rubbish car. Taiwan highlighted the opportunities for walking at a trade show in Canada. Saucony launched the Endorphin Elite 2 shoe, and you can read all of those articles and more at walkingpost.com. Okay, it's time for this week's interviews, and first up is another walking festival. As I mentioned in the news section, there are hundreds of them, but this one is in one of the nicest parts of the UK, especially weather-wise, and that's the English Riviera Walking Festival. To tell us about it is Graham Kerr, owner of English Riviera Walking Tours, who is also the person that organises the festival. Maybe there are some people that aren't sure what the English Riviera means. I wonder if you could maybe explain what the English Riviera is first.
Well, the English Riviera it's a bit of a marketing term, actually, the English Riviera. It's actually officially Torbay. It's made up of 3 towns. So we have Torquay, which is the largest of the 3 towns. Paignton, which is, I think we describe it sort of as a family-friendly town with lovely big beaches. And the 3rd town is Brixham, which is renowned for being one of the largest fishing towns in the UK, and also it hosts the largest pirate festival in the UK, which is always in the first bank holiday in May. So lots of people dressed up like Johnny Depp from Pirates of the Caribbean, and the women as wenches, and they have a great time. So it's a good time to be down here. So those three towns make up the English Riviera. And where that came from, Jim, I think you might be interested to know this, is you've got to go back 200 years to around about the 1800s when we were at war with France, with Napoleon. And the very wealthy in this country used to go to places like the French Riviera for their winters. But as soon as we went to war with France, the battles of Trafalgar and Waterloo, the very wealthy in this country couldn't travel anymore. They couldn't go abroad to France. So they looked around, where can we go in the UK that has a nice mild winter climate and a similar coastline? Hello, welcome to Torbay, which then got renamed the English Riviera, and that name has stuck.
Okay, so I guess that leads us nicely into the walking festival itself, and maybe you could go over some of the history and the evolution.
Yeah, sure. This year is the 4th year of the walking festival. It was sort of born out of COVID, actually, and I'm sure many other walking festivals were the same, where people started walking around where they lived. They started discovering their local environment, and there was this surge of people who wanted to go walking. People enjoyed it. It was therapeutic. It was good for their mental health and all that. And so this is where English Riviera BID Company, the chief executive there, Carolyn Custerson, she invited me to coordinate a walking festival down here. She herself had set up the walking festival on the Isle of Wight, which is now one of the largest walking festivals in the UK. So this is what I did. So we set up the walking festival in 2022. It's just getting bigger and bigger. We're learning along the way and making it more and more interesting for our guests. And our guests travel, we have about half of our guests come from within the Torbay area, and then about 25% within about an hour's drive, and then another 25% more than an hour away from here. We encourage them to come down here and hopefully stay in the bay for a few days and take advantage of coming out on several walks rather than just doing the one. Where we are today, Jim, is that we've created 24 walks, and that's been sort of on average for the other ones as well. But the big change this year is that we're really focusing on experiences. So I know that a lot of walking festivals, they tend to rely heavily on volunteers, but our tour guides are not volunteers. Our tour guides, like myself, we have our own businesses and we are specialists in those areas. And it's those specialists with that specialist knowledge that take the guests out on the tour. So my specialist knowledge, for instance, is Agatha Christie. This is where she was born. This is where she was raised. I talk about her literally every day. And this last year, I've had people from 40 different countries come here on their walking tours. An incredibly popular character and the world's best-selling author. So my walks are very much themed around her life down here. But within the group of tour guides that I've recruited, we have, for instance, an artist, ornithologists, 2 authors, one on swimming, one on crime, musicians, countryside rangers, yoga practitioners, foragers. So it's a real mixed bag of people that we have with us. But this is what makes our walks and our festival, I believe, different to many other festivals, in that we have recognized that people don't just necessarily want to come on a walk. I mean, people obviously do, but there are a lot of people who want more than a walk. They want a walk plus. And so this is where we discover that experiences is the thing that people appear to be moving more towards, and they are prepared to pay more, pay a premium price for that experience. So to give you an example, one of the experiences we did last year, which sold out very, very quickly, was meeting a group of guests at Paignton. And there we have a steam train. We all jumped on the steam train. The steam train took us to Dartmouth. We then alighted there, took a boat across the river to Dartmouth, and then we walked all the way to Blackpool Sands, which is considered one of the most beautiful beaches in the country, had some lunch there, and then came back via the southwest coast path, back on the boat, back on the train. So quite different to what other festivals might do. This year, for instance, of the 24 walks that we're doing, the one that has captured people's imagination involves our guests being taken on a walking tour through a forest by a local tour guide called Ziggy. And he runs a company that specializes in coast steering. So people basically jumping off rocks. We're not going to do that with our guests, but he has lived in these woods all his life, and he has some wonderful stories to tell. So our guests will be taken out on a sort of couple of hours tour around the woods. And then at the end of it, his house is right next to the sea. And he is the manager of a group called the Out of Tuners, who are a sea shanty group. And so the guests will join the Out of Tuners on the beach, around a campfire, around the solstice day, drinking rum and singing sea shanties. That's a walk plus, if you like. That's what makes it so special. This is what I think is one of our USPs, is this ability to create these almost money can't buy type experiences.
What does the festival itself look like? Would you be able to combine those with other ones, or if you go on that one, would you miss another one?
No, again, we've got the festival itself is the 14th to the 22nd of June. So we've got a good window there. So we generally put one of each of these experiences up. And then once it gets to about 3/4 full, then we add a next one to meet that demand. So that's generally how these things work. Just going back to your original question, actually, Jim, about Torbay itself. I mean, I think the other thing that makes our walking festival unique, our USPs, if you like, is that, well, we touched on it right at the beginning, the climate. Doing it in June, I think we should be, fingers crossed, we should have decent weather. And the other thing about our climate is that it's pleasant. So even in the summertime, it's not the sort of heat that you might expect in the east side, London, for instance, compared to what we have here. So in the summertime, our top temperature is maybe 80 degrees, something like that. Whereas in London, it could be 90 or 100 degrees. So that makes a big difference. I've mentioned the tour guides and the fact that they're all specialists in their own area. But the other two aspects of the festival, which I think give us a point of difference, is one, that we have the Southwest Coast Path running through Torbay. So we're 22 miles of it here. So again, most of our walks are focused around the Southwest Coast Path. And the other one is our Geopark. We are a UNESCO global geopark. There's only 9 of them in the UK, and we're one of them. It's a jewel in our crown. Not a lot of people know about this. Now, I guess, did you know that we were a UNESCO global geopark?
I did, but that was from looking at your website.
Well, at least you read the website, Jim, so that's good. What is a geopark? Well, effectively, it's a place with inspiring geology and historical heritage, and we have bags of that down here. It's our coastline, this coastline that attracted the very wealthy people from London who came down here when we were at War with Napoleon. It's this coastline which attracted them. Our coastline dates back 400 million years. This is pre-dinosaurs, formed south of the equator, and it's over the years it's been nudged up to here. And our coastline here is made up of sandstone, limestone. Best example of limestone is a place called Kent's Cavern in Torquay, which is the oldest home in Britain. Another claim to fame. So they found a jawbone in there that dated back 41,000 years. So this is how we can make that claim. And interestingly, one of the sponsors of the archaeological digs that took place at Kent's Cavern was Agatha Christie's father. And this is where Agatha got her interest in archaeology. So it's a very special place. And again, we also encourage people when they come down here to visit the caves, because the other great thing about it is they remain the same temperature all year round, 14 degrees. So if it's boiling hot outside or if it's daylight today, you're still going to get the same environment inside the caves. Quite a special place to go. So again, caves are part of the walking festival as well. So there is a lot going on down here, Jim, to keep people occupied, whether they simply just want to go for a stroll for an hour or so, or we have much longer walking tours. So one of the tours I do, Jim, which I'm sure if you were coming down here, you'd probably want to take on, is the Southwest Coast Path Adventure. So we start in Torquay, which is sort of the middle of our geopark. And day one, we then walk all the way to Brixham, to Berry Head, which is the most southerly point of our geopark. And then on day 2, you walk from Torquay and go north to the other end. And both are about 15 miles in length. And the Torquay to Paignton bit is the nice flat bit. The rest is pretty hard work. It's a good challenge.
I was going to ask that. Are some of the walks more strenuous than others?
Oh, yes, definitely. Those two, certainly, if you're going to do it over 2 days, you've got to be pretty fit to do it. I mean, to give you an idea, and again, you may or may not know this, the Southwest Coast Path itself, the whole of Coast Path, is 630 miles. If you walk the whole thing, which takes about 8 weeks, it's the equivalent of going up Mount Everest, down Mount Everest, up Mount Everest, down Mount Everest. That's how steep it is. So you have to have good knees to walk the Southwest Coast Path. So when walkers come to Torquay and Paignton, that is the flattest bit of the Southwest Coast Path. So they're quite relieved, I think, when they come to that part of it. But either side of that, when you go to Brixham or you go north up towards Teignmouth, there are some pretty hilly sections. So you just take them nice and steady.
Are there any restrictions for dogs, children?
Yes, I mean, not all of these walks would be appropriate for children. Those two I've just mentioned there wouldn't be appropriate for children, and those ones we don't encourage dogs. But there are a lot of the other ones where children will be encouraged to come out, and similarly with dogs as well. So we just have to be selective as to which are most appropriate for children, for animals, dogs in particular.
You already mentioned the dates of the festival. What about booking and accommodation for those that don't live in the area?
To see the full range of the programme of walks, the domain is rivierawalking.co.uk. That's where guests can book. Our walks that do have a cost associated with them. So we start our prices at £12, and that is an early bird offer. So that early bird offer keeps going until the middle of April. And then the prices will go up to, I think it's about £15, something like that. And others will be more expensive. But we don't have any booking fees. And in terms of accommodation, on the website, we list the hotels and guest houses that welcome walkers into their venues. And those can all be seen on there. And again, guests can book. And in some cases, some of the accommodation providers will also be providing special offers to the walkers.
With Torbay being such a tourist area, there's probably no shortage of places.
We have a huge array of hotels and guest houses down here. I would encourage people to come down. If they've not been here before, come here and try it. The area itself is, I think, thriving at the moment. There's lots of new businesses opening up down here now. More hotels, top-end hotels, opening up in the bay as well. We've just had government grants of over £200 million to invest in the area. Torquay and Torbay, actually. We have a company called Swisco who look after all the bins, the street cleaning, etc. Do a wonderful job. When I take people out on my tours, I hear this time and time again. Say, you're so lucky to live here compared to some of the other places that we've seen, other seaside resorts in particular. You're so much cleaner and more beautiful than these other places. And again, if you're living here all the time, you don't appreciate it, I suppose. You often take it for granted. And it's only when you hear this from other people that you realize that we are very, very fortunate to have a town that's, all three towns are well loved and well looked after by Swisco.
And I'm sure that creating lots of memories for people along the way, but I would imagine it's probably creating memories for the walk leaders as well.
Oh, definitely. And it's the walk leaders that make the tour as well. A lot of them are very big characters, love being out with people, love telling stories, making them laugh. I have to say I fall into that category as well. And it's very uplifting, not just for the tour guides, but also for the guests as well. And often, at the end of the tour, the guests will say, oh, come with us for a cup of tea, or let's have lunch together now, or can we have a photograph with you? All these sort of things. And they want to share this with their family and friends at the end of the tour. So it is a very personal, I think, by the end of the tour, after 2 or 3, 4 hours of walking with these people, you get to know them quite well. We limit the number of people who come on to the tours. We limit it to a maximum of 20. So you do get to have a good chance to talk with these people. And as I say, some of them will open up to you and tell you all their problems, and others may just keep themselves to themselves.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure you get lots of repeat business.
We do. And we see the faces coming back. And of course, that keeps me on my toes because I can't keep churning out the same walks year after year. I generally have to keep coming up with new experiences. So this year, 13 of our 24 are brand new. Whether I'll be able to repeat that next year is another matter. But I mean, if they prove to be popular, then sure, again, some of these will be repeated. But we will find others, and we will find some other people who will take people for walks. Again, you'll probably know in your role, you'll see all types of themed walks. I saw one on your website actually just before we came on air, which was to go for a chat walk. Or simply you book someone to walk with you for a chat. We've never tried that before, but who knows? I might throw that one into the mix next year.
You need to do a running one and have Agatha Christie combined with Linford Christie, maybe.
I like your idea there, Jim. That's never crossed my mind. Thank you for that.
Is there anything that you wanted to mention about the festival that we didn't talk about?
Some other little things. When we look at the people who book to come on the tours, it's mainly women who are the ones who book these tours, and the husbands then join them. It's very unusual for the husband to book and for the woman to join. So when we do our social media, it's more focused towards women, and women who enjoy the outdoors, who keep fit, staying healthy. That's where our Facebooks, Instagrams will be targeting. And again, our catchment area is, if you draw a line from, say, Brighton, and go up through the home counties up to, say, Oxford, and then along the M4 across to Cheltenham, and then come down the M5 to Plymouth, Exeter, that is the area where virtually all our guests come from.
That is an absolutely lovely area with lots to see and do, and nice weather too. Way back when I was deciding on which university to go to, and I'm sure that things have changed since then, but you noted down the 5 universities that you wanted to apply to, and then you visited them. And one of mine was Exeter, also in Devon. I took the train there from Hull in January, where it was wet, miserable and 3 degrees, and when I got to Exeter it was 19 degrees and sunny, and it felt like I was in a different country. Maybe I should have gone there. Moving on to the next interview, and I left these shores to move to Canada in the mid-1980s, and outdoor activities are very important there year-round. There are tons of trails and a relatively small population outside of the big cities. In the UK, we do sometimes see ads for Nova Scotia, sometimes Alberta and British Columbia, and recently Newfoundland has started advertising to try and attract European tourists. But what about the other provinces? Recently, Saskatchewan received some funding to upgrade some of its tourism spots, and so I thought we would find out a bit more about the province and why it's great to go walking there. To tell us more is local expert Annika Mang, founder of, among other things, Trail Collective. Annika, thanks for joining us. I'll let you do your own introduction.
I'm Annika Mang, so I'm the founder of Born to be Adventurous. So that's a content creation platform that was created to inspire and empower families to get outside and adventure together. So it was founded on the belief that adventuring doesn't end when you have kids. It's only the beginning. And then I'm also the co-founder of Trail Collective, which is a relatively newer hiking app for families that we created a couple of years ago, but we're just kind of getting started with kind of getting it more out there. And so currently the app is only available in North America, but hopefully it will be open soon to other countries. A lot of our app is really free too, where people can go and use it. And we've been working with Tourism Sask and Sask Parks on trying to make sure all the trails in Saskatchewan are up to date and ready to go for finding trails across Saskatchewan.
You just mentioned Saskatchewan. For those not familiar with the province, I wonder if you could explain a bit about it, where it is and the climate, when people typically would visit, how to get there, those kind of things.
Yeah, so we have 10 provinces and we have 3 territories, and Saskatchewan is one of those provinces, and we're kind of located tucked on the middle to west side. So we're right in the middle between Alberta and Manitoba. We get really interesting weather patterns. So it'll be really warm in the summer. In some areas, it'll be plus 35 degrees Celsius. And then in the winter, we'll sometimes get extreme weather, such as minus 35, 40 degrees Celsius. Usually our winters aren't, it's maybe for a week or two that we'll get it that strong. And in other times, you can kind of explore outside in the snow. And it's really quite beautiful as well. And we're very sunny, so we don't get a ton of rain. It's very, very, very sunny in Saskatchewan, which is just really nice just for that vitamin D. Saskatoon has an international airport, and so does Regina, Saskatchewan. So those are kind of our 2 main cities. Oftentimes people will fly into Saskatoon. I think they just have more flights available. I know in the last couple of years, unfortunately, we had some flights shut down, but now they've reopened more of the international flights again. So it is getting easier to come. Often you will have to fly to somewhere like Toronto, Calgary, or Vancouver before going to Saskatchewan, which just adds an extra flight. But that's kind of the best ways to get here and explore. We don't have the same type of transportation, I don't think, as Europe does in that same way. It's a little bit more harder to get around Canada, but once you do, it's nice.
Even people in Canada think of Saskatchewan as just endless prairies and wheat fields. It's clearly more than that. I wonder if you could maybe explain some of the places that people would visit if they were looking to go hiking.
Yeah, so the key in Saskatchewan is ideally you would have some sort of vehicle or car to explore. That's kind of the best way to get around. Saskatchewan off the main roads has stunning landscapes. So we have some of the biggest sand dunes in Canada to explore. We have boreal trail and forests that are absolutely beautiful with some of the most crystal clear lakes that you can go to. So huge for fishing. You can hike around them. We also have kind of just little pockets of various landscape from a lot of forest and hills even. There's this really neat spot that it's the tallest point in Canada, not the tallest mountain point. Oh, I meant to write this down, but it's the Hidden Conglomerate Cliffs in Cypress Hills Provincial Park. So it's an interprovincial park between Saskatchewan and Alberta. And you hike there and you get to these really neat cliffs that you can see. And it's just completely unexpected in Saskatchewan. It's quite a climb to get there, but it's absolutely just, beautiful to explore.
But then you've got places in the south like Castle Butte it almost looks like Arizona in some ways.
Yes, Castle Butte is really neat. That is a landscape that they used to kind of be able to navigate around the province, back the Indigenous peoples and the colonizers as well. And that is a really cool spot because you kind of drive up and all of a sudden you just have this big butte kind of in the middle there. There's also this really neat landscape. It's called the Missold Clay Canyons as well. And you go there and again, it just kind of pops out of nowhere. And in that area, they do mark it and it's off kind of more of the trail, but they even have like quicksand there, which is just kind of neat to think like, oh, there's like quicksand over there. And then you can kind of climb and hike all over these clay canyons that kind of just emerge out of nowhere.
Are there any long distance trails or multi-day trails?
Yeah, so one of the biggest, kind of most well-known one in Saskatchewan that I would say is still not well-known for many people is the Boreal Trail up in Meadow Lake Provincial Park. So it's approximately 135 kilometers long. There's kind of debate on that because you can do, I think, it in 120 or up to 150 kilometers if you add in the extra side trails. And what's really neat about that trail, you can do it in, well, I know my husband did it in a day, which was crazy. But the neat part is it comes in and out of the trail. So you can connect to, give and support a crew, or if you're hiking through, you come out and there's a couple of places and lodges that you can stay along the way if you like. There's also many different campgrounds to stay at. And on that trail, you will most likely see a black bear a day. If not more. They're scared of you because they're not used to people, so they'll run away. But for example, in one day, we saw a mom and two babies run up a tree, and it was quite incredible just to have that connection with nature because there's just not many people there. So you'll see beavers, you'll see different types of birds, you'll hear the nature sounds, which isn't always as common in some of the more popular national parks in Canada, which just makes it a really, truly kind of escape. But still, the road actually isn't too far away either. So you're not completely tucked away from everything either.
Now that I'm back in the UK, we see commercials on the TV for Newfoundland, for Nova Scotia, for Alberta, occasionally BC. Why do you think that Saskatchewan kind of falls off the radar as a destination?
I think it is harder to explore Saskatchewan. So my good friend, who is a great travel writer and creator, she kind of mentioned it as an active travel province. So you have to and so kind of what she meant by that was you have to put in some effort into finding and experiencing the wonderful things that Saskatchewan has. And so if you're willing to put in that effort, you will discover some truly unique landscape. We're rich with history and just be able to explore a really cool spot that a lot of people in the world don't ever get a chance to discover. Even some of our places up north, we have the Athabasca sand dunes. The only way to access those is really for the truly adventurous. So if you take a plane there or if you canoe there, and then you can hike these incredible landscape. And it's just untouched wilderness that is just this expansive landscape. But it just is a little bit more difficult. We're just a little bit less developed than some of the other areas in Canada.
And so if people were interested in going, how would they plan that? Are there companies that help with that, or does Tourism Saskatchewan help? What's the best way to go about it?
Yeah, so the one great thing is Saskatchewan people are super friendly and we love our province and we're extremely passionate. There are private companies that will help you fly out there, even just for organizing kind of trips just in other areas of Saskatchewan. You can definitely reach out to Tourism Saskatchewan. We have in each of our parks, so our national parks and our provincial parks, we have interpretive centers and there's people there to connect with to plan as well. If you want to plan more of an adventure and are really unsure, there's companies such as Back 40 Training, and they will lead you or guide you on a trip like that as well. So there's lots of local businesses that'll take you and do those kind of things with you. And Saskatchewan people in general, even if you just reach out to someone that lives there, I'm sure they'll be happy to point you in the direction as well.
What about accommodation? You were mentioning some of these remote places. What would you go there for several days and have to camp, or can you get in and out to communities with hotels, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so most of the places have one or more places to stay that often even just a luxurious spot as well. The Athabasca sand dunes, those are a little bit different and not for, as difficult for most people. But we have at Blackstraw Provincial Park, the luxurious glamping domes there. We have in the national park in Waskesiu, which is the Prince Albert National Park. There's a lot of different hotels to stay in. There's a lot of different resorts and cabins that are really cute that you can stay in as well. Same with Cypress Hills. There's a really nice hotel as well with camping as well. So you can kind of either rent a vehicle, or another great option would be to rent an RV and explore as well, Saskatchewan. That would be a great way to kind of hit up the different campsites and get out of the vehicle and explore as much as possible as well.
It is a pretty big province. If you were to drive from, say, the US border up to the north, it would take some time.
We do really love the north, and especially, Meadow Lake Provincial Park. But to get there is almost a 10-hour drive for us from Regina. So we don't get to do it often as we would like.
But I guess if you were going there for the first time, that 10-hour trip, you would see an awful lot between Regina and the park.
Yeah. Yeah, the best is to kind of make your way through the different ones, because along the way you could stop at, Douglas Provincial Park, and there's, a nice dunes trail, and you can check out there's sand dunes that you can explore there. Then you can kind of continue on. You could go to Prince Albert National Park and explore the vast trails there, and maybe even check out Grey Owl's Cabin, which is, if you like to backcountry, is a really amazing backcountry that people also really love to do. Grey Owl was he might even be considered the first Canada naturalist as well. And he lived there, I believe, for 6 months in 1931. So you can hike out to his cabin, and then you can make your way to Meadow Lake Provincial Park. But there's lots of different routes that you could take and a lot of different things you could see along the way. It'd be great to be able to see the whole province, but it's almost better to decide, I'm going to choose to explore the south mostly or the north mostly, and then visit places if you're, passing through, maybe stopping in. But it does become, our province is quite large, and to do it all would take a little bit of time.
Yeah, exactly. Somewhere to keep going back to and exploring, I guess. What are your favorite places to go hiking in Saskatchewan?
Cypress Hills Provincial Park, that is a favorite and one that I recommend often to people. Prince Albert National Park, again, they have lots of day hikes, and then they have the Grey Owl's Cabin backcountry, which is really unique to explore, and beautiful lakes as well. And then again, it's quite a bit more quieter, but Meadow Lake Provincial Park is a highlight as well. And then if you do want to spend time in any of the cities, Regina or Saskatoon, there's lots of nice little parks around there as well to hike in that are really close and just day trips. So around Saskatoon, you have Pike Lake Provincial Park, you have Blackstrap Provincial Park. Around Regina, you have Buffalo Pound Provincial Park, which has amazing hiking, but also some mountain biking, which people don't expect. And that's kind of how some of our mountain bikers train to even do well in the races in the mountains. We also have Echo Valley Provincial Park, which, are pretty beautiful lakes and lots of hiking around there as well.
And the other good thing as well is, especially if you were coming in from Europe, you were mentioning renting a vehicle or an RV, the gas petrol is a lot cheaper there than it would be in Europe. So that's also another positive, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, that's so nice to hear. We're always talking about how it's getting so expensive here.
Yeah, well, I think it's slightly cheaper than it would be here. What time of year do people, obviously you can be outdoors year round in Canada, but what kind of time would people go there for hiking?
I would say the best times are June through October. Late October might be getting too late. And August, September is some of my favorite months because there's often, not all the time, but like less bugs, and the weather, especially in September, it's just so beautiful in September because it's a little bit cooler. You get the nice sunsets, and it's just such a nice time of year in Saskatchewan as well. And it's less busy. The only challenge with September is that sometimes some of the more touristy shops start to close at some point. So it's really important to check and see what is still open and what isn't.
And I guess the same as with a lot of provinces and states, if it's really hot, then just head north.
Yes, yeah. So in July, August, it's nice to kind of go up to the Prince Albert National Park area. Another one that I do want to mention is Narrow Hills Provincial Park. It's less traveled. There's this really beautiful hike. I really wanted to mention this to you because it's just such a gem. It's called Gem Lakes. And you go around a set of 7 lakes that are all named after precious stones. And you can complete it in a day because it's only 5.5 kilometers, or you can camp along it as well, which is pretty unique, especially for families or people who want to experience that, but without the full commitment of a 120-kilometer hike. The lakes were formed from glacier as well. So just when the sun hits it just right, they sparkle, that kind of beautiful turquoise blue, similar to what you would expect in the mountains, but it's here in our province. And they're just this really special place that if you ever get a chance, it is a little bit out of the way. Again, one of those northern kind of spots, but not too far. So from Regina, I think it's only a 5-hour drive. So I don't know if that seems long to you, but for us in Saskatchewan, it doesn't seem too far.
If you go to, I don't know, Banff or some of the parks in Alberta or British Columbia, they're going to be absolutely full of people, whereas in Saskatchewan, you're not going to get it necessarily to yourself, but you're going to see a lot less people.
Yeah, my friend from that area came to visit me, and when we went up north together, and she said, I just can't believe the sounds I'm able to hear here. Because I think even when you get people going through a park often, and quite a few of them, that it even just quiets and affects the natural surrounding in a way. Whereas, when you have less people going through a park or through a trail, those sounds are going to still be ever present because the wildlife hasn't moved away from the trail in the same way as they maybe have in some of those more busy places. Saskatchewan is just truly a gem. It's like one of those, it's hard to explain. One, the people, they're just absolutely just like want to welcome anybody who comes and are just so excited to share. And a local will tell you all the best spots. We want people to go to them and to check them out. And then, there's so many ways to combine hiking and doing something hard at Buffalo Pound Provincial Park, but then going to, this really nice spa with, these nice, beautiful springs, in Moose Jaw. Same with Manitou Beach. They have reached out to me, and I still haven't checked out those trails, but Manitou Beach, kind of about 2 hours from Regina, a couple hours or an hour from Saskatoon. Again, they told me they have 30 kilometers of trails that they want people to know about, but people don't necessarily know about them, so we're going to try to have them mapped out. And they have this saltwater lake where you float, like you can't sink in the lake. And then they also have their spa. So, imagine going for a hike and then going to the spa after. And I think we have these experiences, but people just don't know about them. So definitely, if you're coming to Canada, consider a stop in Saskatchewan.
Definitely makes me want to go and visit Saskatchewan and do some walking there. Wonderful province, and very big as well. We don't really realise in the UK just how big some of the provinces are. That's it for the interviews for this week. Next week, well, the interviews aren't done yet, to be honest, but there are some planned, I promise. Last week for walking, we did a portion of the Ayrshire Coastal Path, one that we've done maybe 50 times already, from Prestwick to Troon. Lots of people had the same idea because it was sunny for a change. It's a lovely coastal walk along the sea that sometimes you can see the Isle of Arran and Ailsa Craig from. Of course, this weekend you couldn't, but the walk starts at one golf course where the first ever Open was held in 1860, and it pretty much finishes at the golf course that hosted the most recent Open in Troon. Of course, when that happened, it really played havoc with that coastal path, as parts of it were no-go areas, just in case you caught a glimpse of a star golfer without paying for the privilege. This weekend might be a case of walking and doing some filming, depending on how the forecast changes in the next 24 hours, because it usually does. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this week's WalkingPost.com podcast, that you'll subscribe to it so you don't miss one, and also that you have a great week ahead with at least one wonderful walk in it. So until next time, happy trails! Walking Post from WalkingPost.com is an Air Coastal Media Limited production.